When Lieutenant General David Morrison told the country 17 Army personnel were being investigated over drug allegations, sex tapes and emails demeaning women, he called it a joint police and defence inquiry.
The matters under investigation are serious.
Tonight we reveal what the Defence Force hasn't, that 2 years ago it found no officer had a case to answer, a conclusion New South Wales Police now allege was negligent and deliberately misleading. Despite the ADF initially identifying at least 10 people of interest, 7 News has been told not one of them was even interviewed, not even the man whose alleged actions sparked the scandal. The Army reservist is accused of secretly videoing sex with a Victorian woman and emailing images over the defence-restricted email network. Those images and more were allegedly shared by up to 60 Army personnel, but the ADF initially found there was no evidence offensive material had been forwarded by its officers. Other acts of vulgarity have since identified 7 civilian and military female victims. The Defence Force has told us once it identified potential criminal charges, but only against the civilian Army reservist, a police investigation should take precedence, so they handed it over. But we've learned the ADF did not consider even disciplining its own officers, let alone recommending charges. Now, 17 men are under investigation, 8 are suspended, 3 face criminal charges, as police accuse the ADF of covering up the scandal when detectives started to make inquiries last July. Defence allegedly denied to police that crucial email evidence even existed and, once detectives uncovered it, refused to hand it over on the basis of national security. Police have told prosecutors the ADF was obstructive, that it drip-fed evidence to detectives, and gave only one statement to police in 9 months. In one email, a colonel asks a colleague why police are even involved, suggesting we need to close the loop on this. In March, a crisis meeting was held here in Sydney with another Army colonel and an Air Force wing commander. Police threatened to raid the ADF offices in Canberra if the obstruction continued, and only then was the Chief of Army and Defence Minister Stephen Smith formally told. Despite repeated requests to speak with Mr Smith, his office did not return one of our calls or text messages on why the ADF has now been forced to reopen its investigation.
I have instructed ADFIS to pursue any and all service offences that might apply.
Something Lieutenant General Morrison might have done 2 years ago if only he'd been told what was happening in his army. Robert Ovadia, 7 News. 2 soldiers at the heart of the Army's so-called Jedi Council scandal. We will not identify whether they are still serving or among 6 sacked by the Army.
We're conditioned a certain way, so you go to war and you take lives. To measure that against crass text, which is taken out of context, you can see why we're confused.
That crass text and imagery was sent between 17 soldiers, later investigated by the Defence Force and New South Wales Police. Hastings Fredrickson is accused of secretly filming himself having sex with a Victorian woman, then emailing those images on the Army's official defence-restricted network. The content of those emails, what do you think of them?
The content was crass. I'm not innocent. I did reply to his emails. I would never show these emails to my mother. It was one bloke sending emails to a group of his friends, trying to make himself look like a hero.
Do you regret replying?
Yes, absolutely. I replied because it was a group thing.
A group dynamic, say the soldiers, where they are conditioned to support each other fanatically. Some say they reprimanded Fredrickson privately, but all accept they were wrong, too foolish or weak to ignore the emails.
It's not my thing, it never has been, it never will be. It's immoral and it's unjust. That poor girl.
When Fredrickson was sacked from the Army Reserve.
No real shock to us. We actually all said, oh well, you play with fire, you're going to get burnt.
Then 17 soldiers learned they were being investigated, including some who did not even reply.
The Jedi Council was the invention of one man, and one man only. And by just replying to his emails, the Army go and assume that we are this group of men that go around demeaning women.
7 News has also spoken with other serving and former soldiers at the heart of the investigation. Each feels they deserved punishment, but say the Army's response was way over the top, merely to suit a political agenda. That bitterness, the feeling that the Army they had literally offered their lives to serve had scapegoated them, led to dark times. And there was one stage where you had a gun in your mouth.
Yes, that's correct.
2 others tried to kill themselves. Both were put into psychiatric care. Such was the sense of shame and betrayal.
You're allowed to shoot other people in the belief that you're serving your country, and those people you're fighting for, to get them some justice. Yet we're not entitled to the justice ourselves.
They've been kicked like they were cheap second-hand bits of furniture being thrown out on the curb. They've not been recognised for the work they've done. They've not had their good past, their creditable service recognised at all.
Robert Ovadia, 7 News. Fighting words from a fighting man.
It's time to act.
Sharing the United Nations stage with Hollywood superstars and world leaders at a global summit on sexual violence, Lieutenant General David Morrison had won worldwide acclaim condemning the mistreatment of women after breaking news of the Jedi Council sex scandal in his army.
I was made aware of it on return on the 12th of April.
That is April 2013. But the Defence Force's own internal findings show the most senior staff in the General's office had been told 9 months earlier that New South Wales detectives were investigating Australian soldiers. Associated with the investigation, reads the report, were a number of Army personnel ranking from Lance Corporal to Major who call themselves the Jedi Council. The General's military advisor, Lieutenant Colonel John Fenwick, took the initial call from police on July 23, 2012. 8 days later, in an email, he mentioned that he would brief Chief of Army David Morrison. The General's Chief of Staff, Colonel Lee Wilton, confirms that on August 1, an incident report summary provided to General Morrison would have prompted the discussion to say, "We've got this individual, this is what's going on with him, because this is what we do daily with the Chief." That individual was Hastings Fredrickson, an Army reservist who emailed sexual images of an unwitting Victorian woman to Australian soldiers, many of whom responded with vulgarity. The Defence Force claims this was all just a big misunderstanding, that it thought only Fredrickson, a civilian, was being investigated. However, senior police have told 7 News the highest levels of the Army were told serving soldiers were also under scrutiny, and that the Army subsequently did everything it could to stymie the police investigation. For 9 months, 17 Army personnel were questioned by police up to the senior rank of Lieutenant Colonel, and the Chief of Army took no action against any of them. The soldiers tell us the ADF had previously cleared all of them, that the Army finally made the scandal public only after it became apparent the police investigation was not going away.
And what you are seeing here today is evidence of that change and my commitment to greater transparency.
I think the Army saw this as something that was going to damage the reputation of the organisation. So essentially we were dropped like hot rocks. We're the perfect candidates for being sacked and used as political levers.
6 soldiers were sacked based on evidence the Army had done nothing about for 3 years. John Sutton defended 2 of them. He says a formal inquiry needs to establish why the General did not make it public for nearly a year.
Organisations such as this, the police and others, have daily briefings on significant issues, and it really does beg a belief to think that he wouldn't have been told and he wouldn't have been informed of such a dramatic and important issue going on in his own organisation.
It's run by a kangaroo court, service chiefs or politicians in uniform, and we're dealt with according to their specific needs.
Hastings Fredrickson has unique knowledge of how one of the Australian Army's most damaging sex scandals played out. He's at the centre of it.
I'm the bad guy. No, I've got no problems with severing my service, terminating my service, but he wanted to throw 6 guys under the bus to whitewash Army sins, and that just wasn't going to cut it.
He is retired Army Chief David Morrison, who broke news of the Jedi Council scandal in June 2013.
I was made aware of it on return on the 12th of April.
A 7 News investigation subsequently revealed police had in fact informed the General's most senior staff 9 months earlier that Australian soldiers were under investigation for pornographic emails sent by Fredrickson and shared by many others. After our investigation aired in January, the General refused our request for an interview and always has. 2 weeks ago, he conceded to the ABC our story was correct, but that his most senior advisors had never told him about a police investigation into Australian soldiers because it wasn't important enough. Even for the following 9 months, where 17 soldiers were implicated, the General insists staffers told him nothing.
We're talking about high-performance individuals working at the Office of the Chief of Army, not muppets. So for him, I find, in my opinion, farcical that he says, a staffer didn't think it was important enough. The Army was already on high alert from the ADF Skype scandal.
4 months before the General claims to have learnt about the scandal, Fredrickson says police made an appointment to charge him.
And then we're advised that the Office of the Chief of Army had stepped in and had somehow delayed the investigation. I'm going, what? My lawyer just said, it's been put on hold.
Then in June 2013, when General Morrison broke the news, the former Army signaller knew he'd be sacked, so he handed in this discharge notice. It is dated June 17, 4 days after the General's news conference.
2 weeks passed. I rang up and I said, what's going on to my handler? And he said, you're not allowed to get out. General Morrison has to be seen to kick you out.
The Army announced Fredrickson's dismissal 3 months later.
The first rule of crisis management is get in front of the story and control the narrative, and that's exactly what General Morrison did.
General Morrison has since become a hero for feminism worldwide. When he held his famous news conference that day, he neglected to tell the country one thing, that the Army had previously cleared every soldier of wrongdoing, including Fredrickson. Robert Ovadia, 7 News.